Kurt, what would you use for his vocals on this record? What kind of microphone?
I used a Neumann U67 into a LA2A, and I think I had a Pultec in line if I wanted to add a little extra EQ, maybe a little bit of top. But that was the chain. I just used the.
Why would you? Okay, the 67 is a tube microphone. So why that mic instead of an SM7? Is that just something that you sounded good on Kurt's voice?
To be honest, it's because I didn't have a U67 at Smart, and I was like, "This is a kick-ass mic. Let's use it." And Kurt was like, I had a 57 set up for him in rehearsal. He goes, "I can just sing in a 57," and. But I told him that the great thing about the 67, it has more subtlety to it, especially when you sing quiet. And it could also take a lot of pressure because he sang really hard. So you can sing full blast into it, and I didn't have to worry about the mic getting overloaded.
I wondered how loud his voice was. Was it really loud?
Yeah, it could get really loud, yeah. But also so quiet, you could barely hear him singing. And
would he do the vocal takes in the control room, or would he do them out in the live room?
We did all the vocal overdubs out in the studio. Once I got a take done and was happy with the bass and drums, I would listen to Kurt's guitar and more often than not, go back and have him overdub it and then go back and overdub it again. And initially he balked at doubling on guitars and even more so on vocals. He said that's cheating. And I kept saying, we're making a record, this is not a live in the studio representation of what you do. We want this to sound widescreen. We want it to sound big and lush. We want it to sound as good as anything else on the radio. He said, yeah, I get it. He just didn't want to do it. And finally, when it came time to double the vocals on the first song, I said, you should go double your vocals. John Lennon did it on everything.
And that was it.
I knew he loved John Lennon. And so. And he's like, okay, Butch. It was about a 5-second pause, and he goes, okay, Butch, let's go double it.
This is very interesting because melodically, Kurt's style of melodies over these odd chord progressions is one of the things that's, Lennon's chord progressions were really weird.
Yeah.
And I saw the similarity between them in that they wrote, I'm not surprised that he liked Lennon. Lennon would write really melodic things over odd chord progressions as well.
Well, Kurt was a huge Beatles fan, and I think some of his vocal melodies are almost McCartney-esque too, because they just move around all over the place. And McCartney is an icon for doing that. I mean, he's one of the best melodicists there's ever been. On bass and on guitar and vocal. I knew that Kurt was a Beatles fan, so that was my way to sort of get him to acquiesce, to go, okay.
So that was it, just saying that the Beatles did it.
Yeah.
Beatles did it all the time. That was the sound of all the choruses and everything. So on the choruses, Kurt would double the voice and Dave would double his harmonies as well.
Yeah, and we doubled all the big guitars.
Yep.
And sometimes we would double the riff like on Come As You Are, the sort of clean guitar, probably the Vox AC30 with the small clone, the pedal that he used to get that watery kind of sound. We actually triple tracked Chris's bass on that.
Okay.
3 octaves. It did not sound good.
Okay.
Like regular bass tuning, then an octave up, and that's in the mix a little bit in a couple spots, but then we did, for whatever reason, let's try a really low one. It sounded terrible. Like he tuned down even lower than he had. He's going boom, 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 boom. It did, because of the effect, it completely messed up the mix. So we just ended up using his main bass. But there's a little bit of I believe there's a little bit of overdub bass on there.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you. And did he use his Gibson? What do you have, a Ripper? Or
a Ripper, yeah, I think that's what he used. Yeah,
okay.
that was his bass, but it's definitely into an SVT.
And was the SVT, did you use the SVT and a particular DI box blended together? Or would you, at this time with 24 tracks, you could actually separate the two probably,
yeah,
right?
I think I'm pretty sure I'd have to look at a track sheet. I'm pretty sure I recorded them separately. I'd usually put the DI on track 1 and then the mic on track 2, because I always lean more towards the mic. Sometimes I just add a little bit of a DI and just to get a little more clarity from the tone.
Yeah.
And the doubling, Kurt was really good at it.
Yeah.
You know, he could play a part of us because they'd rehearsed so much. He knew. But he didn't like to do it in the control room. He liked to go out in the studio and stand in front of his amp. So I would just crank it up in his headphones, and he would do a heavy guitar through. Then I go, let's do a double, and I'd pan him left and right, and he could hear, like, if he got off, you know, I'd just go, we got off in the second chorus of it, let's just punch in there. So the template on most of the songs, especially the heavier songs, was drum kit, bass, SVT, and then the DI, and then big guitars panned left and right, sometimes a third guitar. There might have been a bassman mixed down the middle of Teen Spirit. I believe that was the third track that's barely in there, but it just thickens it up a little bit. You can't even really hear it. And then we would go back and do the clean guitars, and that was almost always the Vox AC30. Kurt had a hard time doing the ding ding playing, you know, singing.
Sure.
And then go do do. He would hit the. You would either miss the pedal, or his timing would be off. So I go, let's just overdub it. He still had a little awkward time doing that, but it just made sense.
It's
to me.
weird. The timing's weird where that thing comes in.
Yeah. And so I understood it too. I was like, well, and then I was like, sometimes I go, you want me to hit the pedal for you? So I've got headphones. And I'm trying to do it. It just didn't work, you know.
Yeah.
So it just made sense to go back and overdub that stuff so we could get it tight. And then the scratchy intro, I think he did about 4 takes with that. But there was
what would that have been on? Would that be
Vox
on
AC30?
Okay.
Might have been the Jazzmaster. I think, did we have a Jazzmaster in there, a Mustang? I don't know, he had a bunch of Fender guitars in there. It was kind of loose because when they started the song, Dave clicked it off and then stopped. It was like click, click, dee 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 dee. You know, there was no click track going through there. So he had to land at, when Dave stopped ticking.
Right.
He had to land. You know, dee 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 dee